Welcome to the show, Sandy. We're happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, today we're going to share a different side of programming with everybody. And I have Sandy with us from the Collective for Hope, and that's a local organization here in Omaha. But I'm going to let her explain more about that. And why don't you introduce yourself, Sandy?
Thanks. Yes, my name is Sandy Lemen. I have been with Collective for Hope. I'm currently the director of programs, and I've been with the organization for going on 4.5 years now. And what our main mission is just to is really just to normalize and validate grief and to do what we can to make sure nobody has to go through grief alone. So we offer free grief support groups from starting at age 3 all the way up. We have family groups, we have standalone adult groups, and kind of a little something for everybody.
Very good. So tell me a little bit about how you got into this industry or why it's so important for you.
Yeah. So, ironically or interestingly, I suppose, I was in the wedding industry for 13 years prior to, so big shift from weddings
Yeah.
to death. But even when I was working in the wedding industry, I always just personally had a connection with the bereaved. I think stemming back from having a ton of loss when I was a little person, I lost two grandparents to death in 1984 when I was 8. And at the same time, my um, paternal grandmother, who I was really, really close with, she had a massive stroke that took her out, pretty much took her out. So it was a lot for a little person to go through. And then in 15, I had my first like peer death. And then at 17, I lost a former boyfriend. He drowned. And that was just a lot. So it was a lot of what we would call cumulative grief, right? And none of that had gone supported really or addressed. It happened, and I was just, supposed to keep on keeping on.
Mhm.
And after the loss of my former boyfriend Trevor in that drowning, it came out sideways, and I started acting out and doing, acting reckless and smoking cigarettes and doing all the things, right? That I now know is normal for teenagers. Um, but yeah, so um, anywho, I found myself as a young adult making bereavement jewelry. That was a way that I kind of started connecting personally with grief, and usually it was strangers. I would read an article in the news and be like, "Oh my gosh, I have to do something for that person." So I started making them, photo jewelry or something with a person's name on it. Even when I was working in the wedding industry, and then I found myself more and more like wanting to do that and less, was filling my bucket, whereas what I was doing in the wedding industry was not.
Mhm.
So anywho, I ended up seeing this grief facilitator training notice, and I was like, "Ooh, I want to do that."
Yeah.
So I signed up for that with the Collective for Hope, then Grief's Journey, and ended up losing my nephew, who was raised as my brother. So my brephew, I call him. Um, he died by suicide in 2019. And it just so happened that his funeral was the day before this grief facilitator training that I had signed up for months prior.
Wow.
So it just seemed like the stars were kind of aligning, and they had an opening, and I found my home there, and I've just not looked back since. And it's been amazing to be able to do this bucket filling work every day instead of just, on my downtime.
Yeah, that's incredible. What an incredible story and a difficult journey for you. I'm sorry to hear about your cumulative loss and how that's impacted you, but ultimately led you to this beautiful place, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about, so you did a facilitator training. So do you have a background in mental health or social work, or did you purely do a facilitator training?
Nope. It was just the facilitator training. I was planning on volunteering and kind of using that knowledge to I don't know, to work with the bereaved doing the jewelry thing, because people would share their stories, and it was I just thought it would help with that because I still struggled with what to say in those moments and with those folks, so that's really kind of why I signed up, I think. And then but yeah, no, I don't have a background in that. I went to school for theater. So
Wow, you have such an eclectic background, Sandy. I love
yeah,
that.
Yes.
Very good.
But I've always
Okay.
loved people. Like in every job that
Yeah.
I've ever had, the connection, the people connection has been what's been the driving force behind all
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So when you did the facilitator training, they obviously teach you to help with the coping skills, that sort of thing. But as far as like unpacking like trauma or like past work is probably not something you do. Can you just describe a little bit about like where your wheelhouse is for, or where a wheelhouse would be for a facilitator?
Yeah. I mean, so facilitators come from all walks of life. A lot of our facilitators do have a background in mental health. They're therapists or counselors in their day jobs. And what they tell us they like most about this grief facilitator work, at least with us, we do peer to peer grief support. So they're able to actually take off that therapeutic hat
Mm.
and just companion because we use the companioning model again. So we're really focusing on like facilitating a conversation between the participants really, right? So we're just there to walk alongside and to help kind of navigate, make sure that the conversation at least stays on topic, and
Mhm.
maybe provide some some good questions or thinking points for folks. But yeah, no, the folks come through that have been past participants, that want to give back, like with my story, right? Like where we're like, okay, it's we want to make meaning out of the death and out of the loss, and we're at a place where we're far enough away from it that we're ready to give back.
Yeah.
So that's what we see a lot. It's yeah, it's either usually it's people that are in the helping professions too,
Yeah.
so counselors, therapists, nurses, nursing students come through a lot,
OT students.
teachers.
Mhm.
Yeah, yes.
Very good. So I want to, we can kind of rewind just a little bit.
Yeah.
I get so ahead of myself because I get so excited about all this and I want to learn about it. But talk to me a little bit about why seeking support during, times of grief or when you're experiencing that is so important, or why you think that people don't seek services or support.
Ooh, okay. So yeah, so twofold. So why it's important really is that when like what I experience personally is when it's not expressed or it's not addressed, it can lead to a whole host of things like prolonged states of depression, anxiety disorders, substance abuse, health issues, and just overall just diminish the quality of life. So that's why it's important. The why I guess what the barriers are, for folks is, typically what we see anyway, are the stigmas around seeking help, right? So we're getting better, I think, as a society of saying, like, mental health is health, right? Like, people are jumping on board more with like, "Okay, this is real, and it's okay for me to seek support or accept help, accept
Mhm.
support." Um, but there are still certain populations, you know, um, cultures that are not quite there yet, where it's like, no, I'm supposed to just, suck it up and move
Internal.
on. Yeah, yeah, right. Like this is what I'm supposed to do. This is part of the gig, and we just no, we just tuck it away and we go forward.
Mhm.
Um, so it's that stigma that asking for help is weak. Um, and just people generally shoulding on themselves, right? I
Yeah.
should be able to handle this. I should be able to get through this on my own. Um, or what we see is that they're depending on how their person died, that there is a fear of being judged when sharing with other people, right? So if they died by suicide, substance, overdose deaths, homicides, there's this fear of like, uh, not being accepted or being judged when sharing that. Um, so yeah, I think that's what we see most often. In
Mhm.
our family groups, it's tough for them to drag their teenagers to groups. So sometimes they're like, that's a thing too, where they're just like, I'm trying. They know that their kid needs the support, but it's like they choose their battles in that moment, right? Because
Right.
when they're in that deep grief, everything is exhausting, right?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Just waking up is exhausting. So having to literally like fight with your child to get
Mhm.
them to come to a support group is just sometimes just too much, right?
Right.
So so that can be a barrier for folks too.
So where do the majority of your participants come from? Do they find you like word of mouth, or do you guys do like specific marketing, or how do people find you?
Great question. So we do ask that in our registration forms. What we see most often for referral sources are word of mouth. So it's participants that have been through that are spreading the word. Hospitals are pretty
Mhm.
good about letting folks know. Churches, schools are
Mhm.
great, because they can only do so much. The
Right.
school counselors can only do so much in a day working with the kiddos. So
Mhm.
a lot of our referrals come from there and from therapists and counselors because they know that either they don't necessarily specialize in grief, because a lot of them don't,
Mhm.
and they don't teach grief as a part of that. Like you can elect to take some additional courses on that, but it's not part of that training. So
Mhm. Because there is that barrier to seeking services, I think, for grief, for those reasons that we just talked about. I think those points of referral are really important because that's what's going to like ultimately, I don't want to say sell, but like encourage people that that is a resource that they should seek. And I think from counselors or medical providers or word of mouth is obviously the most powerful. That's what, at HETRA, that's our biggest referral is just word of mouth. People come and experience the services and benefit from it, and they want everybody else to as well.
yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your services or kind of what it looks like if someone shows up for a group. Like what does you guys probably do a lot of different things, but what's it typically kind of look like?
Yeah, it deeply varies. So our family group is our core group. Um, so that varies really. That's our closed group. So in that scenario, you've got the whole family unit that comes in together. They're with the same cohort. Um, so it's the same folks that are coming week after week for 8 weeks in a row.
Okay.
Um, they come into the space. It's very warm and welcoming. We open our doors 30 minutes prior to the start of group just to let folks come in. They can bring their own meal if they want, just to settle into the space, kind of decompress from the day before we jump right into group.
Mhm.
Um, we find that a lot of folks say that they really like that to come in and eat dinner there because, dinners can be really hard after we lose our person, especially, if that was something that we did together, right?
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, it just doesn't feel the same. So kind of just having that place where, okay, this is our new thing. We're gonna go, we're gonna go to grief group, we're gonna grab our favorite, food on the way and sit down and hang out. And yeah, so that's something we do. Then right at 6:30 we have everybody form a giant circle and we do just a quick check-in, let everybody know what the theme is for the week, and then we break out into developmentally appropriate breakout groups. So adults are processing with adults, littles are processing with littles, teens are with teens, and so on.
Mhm.
But we're all talking about the same theme. So week one, who are we and why are we here? So that the hope is that at the end of the night on the way home they are able to keep the conversation going, right? um so we open and close together, but the middle point, so the main part of the night, the hour, everybody is able to process on their own with
I
with
love
their
that.
peers. Yeah.
I just want to tell you how much I love that the family unit is involved in that way because I think that's so important from especially when we're trying to process things and things that with children is that being able as the adult to support them through that, know what they talked about, know what points of conversation you might be able to talk about or support them through. I think that's incredible that you do that as a family unit. I also really like that it's kind of the same crew for 8 weeks or whatever, because then they form bonds with each other and you build that rapport because being having other support groups like here at HETRA, we find that like the longer the weeks go on, the more people are likely to share because they start to build that bond with each other too, right? So I think that's
Exactly. Yeah.
really neat as
Yeah,
well.
it is so neat to see that happen. And, everybody week one, just the vast difference. Like from week one, everybody comes in anxious and, oh my God, why am I here? I don't want to be here. I mean, even the
What to
adults, right?
expect? Ah.
Yeah, yeah, just like you can feel it on them when they come in, and it can most of the time, it is just so heavy, and then
Mhm.
just as the weeks go, it gets a little bit lighter, and then they're smiling, and they're, "Hey, how are you?" And it's just by the end of it, they're talking to each other and making friends and exchanging contact information, and it is so beautiful just to see in that 8 weeks, the shift from the way that they walk in those doors to the way that they leave, and they can come back through as many times as they want. We have families that have come through 5, 6 times in a row. And that's cool because we know we
Mhm.
don't graduate from grief. So
Right.
it's like whatever is helpful to them, our doors are open. So whether they want to shift from that family group to one of our adult only groups, um, those adult only groups do look very different. They are open groups. So folks can come once and never again. They can come, we offer those twice a month, each one of those adult groups. So we have a suicide loss survivor group. So for suicide loss specific, and that's an adult only group. Then we have a pregnancy and infant loss group for adults. And then we have our adults only support group, which is for any type of loss, but it's just, for
Mhm.
the grown-ups, no kids, and no children's programming in tandem, no
Mhm.
childcare is available for that group. Um, but yeah, so they're just in those, we typically have a core group of people that come every time.
Yeah.
And then we have new folks coming in, which is cool because, we have people that have had their loss maybe is 5 years out, right? They've been
Right.
coming for a long time. And they just to see them kind of wrap their arms around the people that are very fresh in their grief and that, it's so lovely because those folks that are a little farther out, um, serve as a source of hope, right? Like, oh my gosh, okay, you survived, and if you
Mhm.
can survive this, and you
I
went
can
through
do it.
this, yeah, I can
Yeah.
maybe there's hope for me, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Love
it's
that.
mhm.
So tell me a little bit about are all of your services free of charge? Is it a sort of pay as you go sort of situation? Talk to me a little about kind of the funding for your organization.
Yeah, no, all of our support groups are free. And we love saying that
Yeah.
because a lot of times, as far as barriers go, that can be a major barrier for people
Oh, it
getting
takes that down.
traditional therapy, right? Or counseling.
Mhm.
Like a lot of our families are at or under the poverty line. So, but even those that aren't, maybe we love therapy and counseling.
Mhm.
We say both and, right? So they're just very different, right? It's one thing to have that one on one individual therapy, um, and your therapist may or may not have experienced a close loss yet, right? We all will, but they may not yet. So even if they've read all about it, it's different. It just hits differently hearing it from a peer, right? Much in the way that, 12-step groups work, is like hearing your feelings come out of somebody else's mouth is so validating and so
Oh,
normalizing, right? So
mhm.
both and. So sorry to go off on that tangent,
Oh, you're fine.
but that um but that is so important. So even if they kind of, have health insurance and can do the therapy thing, it's nice that we aren't also charging them, to come get that extra support because we
Mhm.
ideally would love folks to have both.
Mhm.
But yeah, all of our support groups are free. Our We do cool youth programming, even like an overnight at the zoo, that's free for the families or for the kids. I guess, sorry, adults can't stay the night. I get to,
I
but
was gonna say, sign me up.
yeah, you can come volunteer. But yeah, so no, all of that is free. The only thing that we charge for are like some of our trainings and things like that.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
yeah,
So then are you guys primarily grant funded?
we
And most of your facilitators are volunteers, right? I mean, that's
Yep. So our model is that we always have either a contractor or a full-time staff person that is
Mhm.
on site at all of our groups. So that person is paid, and then everybody else is, yeah, volunteer facilitators.
Mhm.
So we're always looking and in need of volunteers. Um, and then what did you ask me? Sorry, did you ask me
Are you
something?
grant funded or do you do
Oh,
external fundraising or how does that work for you?
all of it. We will take it all. But yes, primarily it is grants.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yep.
Are you looking for a leg up in communicating more effectively with participants in your therapeutic writing and EAL lessons? Teaching Aids for EAS comes to the rescue with a range of more than 70 visual aids designed specifically for our industry. Each one has been designed by a Path International certified professional who understands the unique challenges that we face inside and outside the arena. Visit teachingaidsforeas.com today to shop their range of fun, scalable, and affordable products, including flashcards, posters, activity boards, PEX cards, handheld cueing paddles, arena games, and more. They also work directly with instructors and centers to design custom products and solutions. As a special treat for my Not Just a Pony Ride listeners, use code HETRA, HETRA, for 10% off your order now through May 10th at teachingaidsforeas.com. Okay, well, we're going to shift gears just a little bit because I have another guest here with me today, everybody. Miss JJ is here. She is an occupational therapy student that's in her final rotation as a doctorate. And the reason why we believe so much in a collective for hope and believe in that mission and all of that is to help people, right? And we have been able to partner with you guys so graciously and bring some of this programming for grief support to HETRA with our horses. And it's been so incredible to watch this program grow. And I am excited to hear JJ just talk a little bit about it. So you want to introduce yourself? Just tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, everybody. My name is JJ. I am currently in my last semester at College of St. Mary. I am here at HETRA doing my capstone project, and I've partnered with HETRA and the Collective for Hope to kind of create a new mental health program here specifically for grieving children.
I love that. And I think that almost it's I don't know. I'll pose this question to Sandy too. Do you think it's I don't want to say difficult, but talking to children about grief, that's a pretty complex feeling, you know? So talk to me a little bit about maybe Sandy, a little bit of your history of helping, littles through grief. What's kind of the approach?
We are all about using concrete language, talking with them at their, developmentally, what they can kind of comprehend, which is why the breakout groups are so great because we have like 3 to 5 in a group, and so on. But that's the main thing. What we find is that, and what our volunteers have observed too, is that with kids, they don't stay in it, right? They just have these little bursts of sharing and feeling like my mom died and I'm really sad, and then they're like, I like Roblox, I mean, like, so it's like, woo, like, so yeah, they're kind of, they're very much kids, and they just have these little moments of grief, whereas the adults are like in it and they stay in it, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I don't know if
Yeah.
that answers your question, but
Absolutely. So, JJ, you tell us a little bit about your structure of the program that you created for us and kind of how you selected those topics, knowing that you were going to teach, children about how to process their grief.
Yeah. So just to kind of take it back to where I started my planning process, I guess, when I was thinking about what I wanted to do for this program, looking through, the occupational therapy perspective, using that holistic lens, as we call it, we look at individuals who are working with holistically, meaning that, we're looking at their personal situation and how that impacts every aspect and domain of their life.
Mhm.
And so, if you just think about kids in general, young kids who most likely have a hard time initiating, their own coping skills or
Mhm.
communicating, their needs and their wants appropriately or expressing their feelings in a safe and healthy way. And then you add grief on top of that, like Sandy said earlier, it can kind of come out sideways.
Mhm.
And grief at such a young age can impact so many different domains. And what I mean by domains is, sleep, leisure and play, social participation,
Mhm.
health management, and education. Someone who is going through grief can have, a lot of challenges in those areas. Um, and so, planning this program and what I really wanted it to accomplish is that, kids will come to HETRA, learn about their grief, learn about how grief impacts them, learn different skills and tools that they can keep in their toolbox to manage their own mental health, learn coping skills and self-esteem and everything that's about mental health, but also have it a place for them to come and do something fun and new and challenging and unique and push themselves a little bit. Make connections with peers who are going through similar experiences and make connections with horses. And honestly, just give them a space to, have fun and be a kid, but also still, get something out of it too.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that horses are so incredible for exactly that, just like meeting us where we are and loving us and like honestly teaching us something cool, right? Like that
Yeah.
we can't ignore that horses are just really cool and kids love unique things that they can learn about and engage with. And yes, they're learning some coping skills and some really good core mental health concepts, but they also, like you said, just get a space to like be a kid and
Be
enjoy
fun, yeah,
themselves.
have fun and do something new and push themselves to, learn new skills.
Yeah, yeah, that's important. So when you structured it, we did a 4-week pilot study, kind of. So we took 4 weeks to sort of we recruited some participants to come to our program, and then we formulated kind of a curriculum around that. So you want to talk a little bit about what that looked like?
Sure. Yeah. So, HETRA's mental health programs typically, run for 12 weeks, and this was only 4 weeks. So I kind of tried to pick weeks that I thought would be, fun. They get to dip their toes in a lot of different areas, but they also still get to touch on some grief and coping skills topics. So week one was just a really, intro to HETRA, get to know the horses, get to know your group. That was just a really fun week for everybody. They got to pet and groom some of our mini horses, and they really loved that. Um, Week two was a little bit more intense. That was kind of a tougher week. Um, we read a book called When Someone Dies that really kind of breaks down grief in a kid-friendly way and how it can impact them. We talked about, what mindfulness is, which was kind of a difficult concept for them.
I could imagine for kids.
Yeah. But, it was good to talk about. We practiced, using all 5 of our senses to be present in the moment and, be conscious of what our body and our brain is telling us. And then we practiced, different breathing strategies, and they got to use a stethoscope on one of our horses to listen to her heartbeat, and feel her breathing.
That was my favorite. I was lucky enough to hold the horses while you guys were doing
Yeah.
that. And the kids were just like they put the stethoscopes on and then they like, put it up to the horse's like chest and they're like, I don't hear anything, JJ.
Yeah.
I don't hear anything, and then you could see it. They would just like stop for just a second. And then they're like, like their face
Yeah.
just lit up, like, I can hear it. So it's like, they true, whether they know it or not, they truly were taking a moment to like shut everything down to focus on that one thing. And that it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was
That's
that part was fun. And then our week 3 was remembering our special person. And I wanted to keep that language consistent with what the Collective for Hope uses when we call the person who died our special person. And so we made horseshoe memorials with pictures of their person. And we talked about, what the horseshoe symbolizes. It's good luck and protection. So now that they have their picture of their person, their horseshoe, their person is always watching over them and protecting them. And then we did a scavenger hunt around the barn where they got to look at anything and everything horse related. They looked at different types of saddles and halters and bridles and pads, and they went into our kitchen and got to look at the grain, and to learn all about that. But then they also got to answer questions about their special person and their family and just kind of encourage, an open discussion about that. And then our last week was really fun. That was rooting for ourselves. We learned about self-esteem. What is it? Positive versus negative self-esteem and different, situations that can kind of make that fluctuate and go up and down. And then we learned about positive affirmations and what those mean. And so I had them make mnemonics. So they wrote their name, and every letter of their name stood for a positive characteristic that they wanted to describe themselves as. And then they had to practice, saying those. I am generous. I am caring, or whatever. And then our equine activity, they got to do an obstacle course with our mini. So that was their first time ever leading a horse. And so that was kind of a good, challenging activity for them to think about, kind of reflecting back on their self-esteem. This is a challenging thing,
Right.
but you can still do it. And so once they, had a few rounds through the obstacle course, we stepped it up a notch and we had them hold an egg and a spoon while they were also leading their horse. So even doing something even more challenging.
I would need positive affirmations to do that too.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, but they did so well and they had so much fun. And after, we all came out as a group and we had them practice, one positive affirmation for how they just did in that obstacle course. So yeah, it was a really fun 4 weeks.
I love that. Oh, it's like it was packed and it was kind of a fast and furious 4 weeks, right? But the cool part of it was that you kind of took 4 curriculums out of ultimately a 12-week program, which you created for us. So we're hoping to continue to partner with Collective for Hope to do those longer stints so that people can really, settle into the programming and get used to it and continue. And we're super excited that we're hoping, fingers crossed, we can turn this into sort of a family dynamic. So that's we're taking a page out of Collective for Hope's book and supporting that family unit. And we're hoping that we can maybe bring the family in, kind of separate like you guys do, keep the same topic, kids go with kids and adults go with adults. And we're working with the horses and then come back together and kind of disseminate. And I think that this program has a lot of growth and a lot of, room to grow and will impact lots of people. So
Yeah, we are so grateful and so excited for everything that JJ and HETRA has done. Like, we are equally as excited.
So
Yeah,
JJ, do you have any advice for like if you are listening to this and you are a center that's really resonating with, this grief support? I'll ask, you as well, Sandy, but JJ, do you have any advice to someone who's wanting to start up, some kind of equine part of a program for grief support?
I would say definitely get involved with whatever grief organization you're looking at. I think that, I also attended the Collective for Hope's grief facilitator training, and I think that that helped a lot, not only at, I also volunteered at the Collective for Hope, but also here planning the activities and facilitating the groups. There's only so much you can read about online, and read different, articles or even watch YouTube videos about how to work with grief. But I think the best way to do it is to just get involved with whatever organization you want to work with.
Yeah, I love that. Sandy, can you shed a little light? Are there Collective for Hope is a local thing, correct? Or do you have
yeah,
different
but yes,
locations?
we are local, but the best place to find grief centers. We are a part of the National Alliance for Children's Grief, so NACG. They You can go onto their website and put in a zip code and it will pull up all of the grief centers
Amazing.
in that area. So that's the best resource, I would say, for finding that, especially if you're working with kids,
Mhm.
because that's what their focus is on. But some of those programs have adult only programs too. But that's what I would say. Go to the NACG website and go under their support tab and put in your zip code, and you should be able to find some centers within the area that you could reach out to them and get involved in some way and see if you might be able to partner.
I love that. I will find that website and put that in the show notes for everybody. So you can scroll down and click on that and find that really easily. And I'll also put Collective for Hope's information there as well. So you can kind of get a feel for the services that they offer and things as well. Sandy, do you have any other kind of feedback for centers that might be interested in initiating some grief services?
Um, I don't, but do it because it's just been such a positive experience. I know that our families that participated in the trial just really loved it, and the feedback was amazing. So yeah, I would just encourage you to look into it if it's a possibility.
I love that. Well, I have enjoyed having you both on this podcast so much. I've learned a lot. I think this podcast will impact lots of folks. And I know for a fact that the program here at HETRA and our partnership with Collective for Hope is going to impact people going for a very long time.
Yeah.
But before I let you guys go, Miss Sandy, I want to ask you our wrap up question for the season. And that is, what is your golden rule? How do you live your life? What do you live your life by?
Mine is be the person you needed when you were younger.
Mm.
And yeah, so that, I think that's ultimately what led me to work in grief, is that when I was a little person I needed support and didn't necessarily have it, And so I'm grateful to be able to work at a place that offers that, so folks don't have to go through it alone, and it doesn't have to come out sideways. So yeah, so being the
Right.
person that I needed when I was younger is my golden rule,
I love
as
that.
to the best of my abilities. I'm not, you
We always give ourselves a little grace, right?
yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. I appreciate you endlessly. And this will not be the last time we see you, Miss Sandy. We'll see you down the trail.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. We love you all. So thank
Thank
you. Thank you. All
you.
right. Bye.
That's all for today, but until the next episode launches, scroll down to the show notes and click on the link to get plugged in with us on Facebook, Instagram, or our exclusive educational club at Patreon. This podcast is presented by HETRA University, the educational arm of Heartland Equine Therapeutic Riding Academy in Gretna, Nebraska. HETRA University's mission is to provide high-quality educational offerings to the EAS community. Check out all the HETRA University has to offer at www.hetrauniversity.org.